Hey everyone, it's FamilyJules7X. Welcome to this week's tutorial on recording stuff. And this week we're going to be talking about mixing. And actually, we're going to be talking about mixing for the next 3 weeks. And the reason for that is I was going through, what I wanted to talk about for these videos. And when I got to mixing, originally I wanted to do one video. But the amount of stuff that I wanted to talk about for EQing and compressing and stuff was ridiculous. So this is actually going to be a 3-week endeavor. This week we're going to be talking about mixing everything except EQing and compression, and those are going to be separate videos in themselves. So this week we're going to talk about doing levels, doing your reverbs. So I have my song here all recorded, all final recorded. I've got my bass, got my rhythm guitar, just as we talked about last week. And I actually already recorded the video to this just because, I had time to do it. So when we start talking about doing video and stuff, I'll be telling you how to go about doing it, just like everything else. I'm not actually going to do it then. So everything that you hear here is going to be, what you hear in the final cover. All right, well, these videos are getting really long, so I'm going to try to cut as much bullshit as I can. All right, so the first thing that we got to do, is we're going to shut all these levels down. And you're going to ask me, but FamilyJules7X, shut them all down? To which C3PO would respond, no, shut them all down. All right, so we have all of our levels at 0. I already have these are the rhythm guitars. These are all panned appropriately. So in one of the previous videos, I talked about how we're going to be doing things in order. Do you remember what order that was? That order was drums, bass, rhythm guitar, and leads, just like how I have them arranged here. It's just something that I've gotten used to doing habitually. All right, so we're going to start with these fucking drums. So, also, to the people who are complaining that I'm swearing too much, fuck you. So even though we have the levels down, we're going to mute all these tracks. We're going to mute them. Mute them. All right, so now we got the drums by himself. Nothing's going to happen until we start turning up some of this volume here. Made some changes to the drums. Not too bad. It's quiet enough so that, down here we're good. But, all right, so we're gonna, it sounds pretty good at 50. And then once we have our levels right, we're gonna go to effects. Now, all DAWs use effects and stuff. Oh shit, you know what? Before you do any of this stuff, you might want to get this program right here. It's Voxengo Spectrum Analyzer. Now, I have the one that default comes with Mixcraft. It looks something like this. And I know that you can download one off the Voxengo. God, that sucks to say. Voxengo. Off their website. This will help you greatly for your mixing so that you can see stuff that you aren't hearing, maybe after ear fatigue and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely get one of these. I don't think it's too expensive. It's definitely worth it. All right, but we're gonna close that for now. Oh, actually, I'll show you what it does. So if I were to play this is on my master effects track, Global Effects. And that pretty much shows me all of the frequencies that are being used. We're gonna talk about that in the next video when I talk about EQing, but that's very important. All right, so what you do normally now is you'd start with your EQ. I have a real cool EQ here that we're gonna talk about next week. I'm just gonna leave that there, turn it off. We'll talk about that later. Then after you do the EQ, you're gonna do the compression. All right, turn that off. But what I do want to talk about is reverb for this track. Now, you can go really crazy with the reverb for this, but I really recommend not going too crazy because it starts to get muddy, and you want your drums to sound like heavy, and they're not gonna sound heavy if they're all over the place. So this is just default whatever the fuck. I mean, you know, it sounds really cool, but we're not going to want this much reverb. So let's start talking about what this shit is. Reverberation, that's like the decay. Remember we talked about in the tones. This is how much, you know, reverb is going on, and after you stop playing, how long that sound is going to keep going. You know, this is actually fine to turn up a bit. Sometimes I like to go about like 75, never 100, 75. High frequency damping is, you know, I mean, pretty much what it says. I mean, you're kind of dampening the high frequencies, or at least that's what, you know, I've noticed. It could be doing something wrong, and I'm just, I don't know, looking too far into it. But you don't want much of this, because that's going to start fucking with your cymbal sound. So I'm actually going to turn it down to about 15. You know, let me show you how that sounds. Actually, let me turn down the wet mix a bit. I'll tell you what that does in a minute. It's kind of a subtle effect at first, but it can really start fucking with your mix if you get too crazy with that. So I'm going to keep that down at like, I don't know, 15, 20. Yeah, let's go 15. Stereo width. Stereo width. I'm tired, shut up. This is how much of, you know, the reverb is being pulled into the pans. So if I were to have this at 0, you're probably not going to be able to hear this if you're listening to this on speakers. If you're listening to it on headphones, you'll be able to hear it. I mean, it sounds cool now, but you don't want it. It's you really want. God, this sucks because, you know, this is a lot of stuff that I want to talk about later, but, you know, I have to talk about now. But you know, when you start looking at the sounds that are being pulled across both ears, it sounds really messy. I mean, I'm gonna keep saying that, but it's true, and it sounds really amateur. So we're gonna keep stereo width at like, I don't know, 10, 15. We'll set it at 15 and change it later if need be. So this is how my drums sound now. All right, so now that we have these settings all set, let's affect some of the wet mix and dry mix. Now, what do these do, you may ask? Now, the wet mix, this is how much reverb is being kind of shoveled into your actual mix. If I were to turn the dry mix all the way down and the wet mix up a bit, I'll show you what I mean. And now, obviously, the dry mix is just it by itself, is just the original mix. I mean, am I right? All right, so we're going to keep the dry mix at 100, and we're going to turn the wet mix to, like, I don't know, 7, 9. Usually I don't go too crazy with the reverb. I have in the past and learned from that mistake. 7 to 9 to 10, whatever the fuck you want. If you want some heavy reverb, don't go above 10, because like that sounds like this. And that's pretty heavy. Let's go down to 7. So there's some good reverb, and you know, it's not too bad. All right, so, you know, we'll leave that for the drums. We'll talk about the EQing for the drums next video and the compression in the video after it. So, all right, so let's mute our drum track and listen to the bass. All right, again, it's down pretty far, so let's match the bass so that we can still hear both tracks with the drum and bass. All right, so this part right here, that's our bass. See how it's dropping because I turned it off? Oh yeah, I actually hit the bass guitar there, like right there. because I'm, you know, whatever. All right, so you know, bass is good. Bass sounds okay. Let's actually bring it down to about 50. Because as you can see here, it's getting a little loud. And the goal here is so that when we have all the tracks going, it looks pretty like flat. It doesn't look like, you know, any of these sides are going too high. That means that, you know, your bass frequencies are too high, or your, you know, whatever, leads are too high. And when I say leads, I mean like high trebles. I've just gotten used to saying leads. I don't know why. All right, so yeah. So now here's a trick. Here's an awesome little trick I found out recently, which comes in handy. What we're going to do is we have our bass track. What we're going to do is we're going to duplicate it. We're going to make a second bass track here. And why are we going to do that? I'll show you. We're going to turn this bass track down. We're going to add an effect to this one. We're actually going to distort the fuck out of this. All right, so here is the Acoustica distortion. It's not very good. I'm sorry. I love your program, Acoustica, but your distortion sucks. It gets really messy, but you know, we're not looking for grade A distortion here. We're looking for just distortion. Doesn't matter. And what this technique is called is bass saturation, and I really like this technique. What it's going to do is it's going to add a lot more clarity to our bass, but we're going to use it very sparingly. Now what these things do is the pre-gain, I mean that's how much of the signal is going into the distortion, how much distortion you have, obviously, 1 to 100, and then post-gain is how much of the sound is being outputted. You want all of the sound going in, you don't want to turn that down at all. But if it's going to get too loud, which it is, you're going to turn on the post-gain. See, I've already put it at about 25. Distortion I'm actually going to turn up because fuck yeah, distortion. Alright, so that sounds like this. Sounds like trash, doesn't it? Alright, so we're actually going to turn that way down. And we're going to turn on the bass like that. Now, you want to make it so that you can barely hear it. So what I do is I go to 0, and then I turn it up until I can hear it. About 20. Now I'm going to turn it down a little bit. 14%. That sounds good. And we're actually also going to add a compressor to this track as well. So let's filter back in the drums. Oops. Now in retrospect, that's actually a little bit too loud. Let me turn the distortion down a bit. I'll turn that down to about 10, 11, whatever. 11 works. And trust me, when you get all these tracks going, you know, that distortion is going to be filtered out. But for some reason, I found it really adds clarity to it, so definitely give this a try if you haven't before. This is something that when I learned, I jumped on it and did it to like every track I've ever done. So yeah, it's, you know, it's an easy fix to not having a good sounding, you know, bass. The bass isn't sounding too clear in your mix. But, you know, that's usually more of a problem with your EQ, which we'll talk about next video. Fuck. All right, so you might want to, you know, snip off these edges. You're not going to want them. But you usually don't want to like cut it off like right fucking there. You want a little bit to, you know, come in. If you've later found out that you've got a lot of, you know, sound, you know, when there's not supposed to be sound, you didn't do your gates right. Sometimes it helps to add a fade in like this, and it still sounds okay. So over here, yeah, we're good. Maybe, fuck it, whatever. All right, so now let's look at the rhythm guitars. Now you're going to realize that we're going to be turning this one down a lot more. Since there are 3 tracks, it gets to be kind of loud. So let's set it at 20 for now. See how like nice and flat my rhythm guitars are? That's how yours should look. And this is going to get kind of frustrating because, you know, you're going to want a lot of crunch with your rhythm guitars if you're anything like me, but you're going to have to sacrifice some of that. But you can EQ it later if, you know, if there's room for that, you know, cool rhythm guitar crunch, yeah, you can throw that in there. But, you know, for now, you really want just like that. See, I never jump above 30, you know, minus 30. So now for the third one, notice that we did these two first, and now we're going to do this one. Now remember how I said for this one we kind of turned it up so that we can hear it sort of? I've found that the way that I do my center panned rhythm is similar to how I do saturation for the bass. So watch this. About the same. I tried to find, you know, when I could really hear it and then turned it down a little bit. So what that center panning is doing is it's really filling up the, you know, kind of the middle of it so it doesn't sound so hollow. Alright, so let's mix that in with the other tracks. Alright, so yeah, you know, maybe I'll turn up the rhythms a bit. And now what I like to do is, since we have this few of, you know, tracks going, is I'll go just rhythm and bass. See how that sounds? And see, because of that, I realized that the bass is starting to get a little swamped. So let's just turn it down like, oh, fucking 3%. Oh yeah. See how for the most part that's pretty level? We're going to make that really level later when we do mastering with multiband compression and stuff, which I will talk about. Alright, so now we've got, you know, drums, bass, and rhythm. Let's, you know, try to listen to the rhythm and the drums by himself. Sounds really cool. All right, so we're gonna got these going. Now let's start looking at the leads. All right, so usually what I like to do is I start with what I intend to have as the center pan lead. I already assume that this lower one is going to be all my center panned lead guitars. So I'm gonna unmute that and turn it up as we play. Alright, so that sounds okay. Let's listen to it over here. Then over here. I'll get some of this stuff out of the way. Yeah, see, we've got a little bit of some, you know, resonance going, so watch this. We can fix that later with EQing and compression, so don't worry about that. We're actually not going to compress this track, we're going to do multiband compression, that should take care of that. Blah, 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 blah. I hope you know what I'm talking about. Alright, so now we've judged that the lead for the center pan is going to end up being about, what, 64? Okay. Now, when you're doing panned leads, so let me show you this lead right here. I'll turn it up to 64. Sounds good there, but when we start panning it over, I'm gonna pan it to the right. Pan it to about 19. All right, so now it's a little too loud, and why is that? It's because you're pushing all of the sound over, which, let me show you an exaggerated. Look at the level right here as it's playing. Yeah, so it's actually turning up more as if I were to just center it. It's about twice as much. Can you do math? I can do math. So we're gonna turn that to about 19. And then we're gonna turn the volume down a bit. We're gonna turn it down, I don't know, 50, 55. 55! I mean, that's starting to sound okay. I mean, it might sound a little quiet to you, but that's because your ears are adjusted to what I was just playing. Blah, blah, blah. Let's, so now let's do the same thing over here. So what do we have? 55. We'll put this at 55 as well. And then put that 19 to the left. Let's see how that sounds. Cool. Now, at this point, now that you've got your levels right, you've got your reverb on your drums. We're gonna add reverbs to these other tracks. Let's make sure that we can hear every instrument. So first, just sit here and say, all right, can I hear the drums? They're actually starting to get muddied up, and usually I'll find that after I'm done mixing, I have to turn up the drums a little bit. But because we turned it down to 50 and not to fucking 100. I'm actually gonna, I actually have room to turn it up to say like 65, 62, 4. God, I hate that. We'll do 59. That sounds fine. And we can turn it up later if we need to. All right, so we got this going. Let's see if we can hear the bass. I mean, pretty much. It sounds fine. I mean, bass won't really get to be a problem unless over here, you're seeing the bass by itself getting really high up. So I'll show you. All right, so we can hear the bass. Cool. Can we hear the rhythm guitars? Sure can. Can we hear the leads? Yeah, we can hear the leads. That's fine. Now, can we hear the leads in different situations? Like say, okay, we can hear the leads here when they're panned. We can hear the leads here when it's centered. Obviously, because there isn't a whole lot going on. And then, can we hear the leads when there's 3 lead tracks going, and is it getting too loud? Yeah, and it actually sounds pretty big there, which is the intention. Let's hear it over here. All right, yeah, it sounded pretty all right. All right, so now let's talk about what effects to use and what effects not to fucking use on certain tracks. So for the bass, what we're gonna be using is we're gonna be using EQ and compression. That's fucking it. Don't add, delay or reverb unless, the track calls for that. But for the most part, when you have general bass like this, you're not gonna do that. So fuck it, EQ, compression, and distortion for this track, that's all you're going to need. I don't know. As you start learning what, the other effects do, you might want to, but for the most part, if you want a good, heavy, band thingy sounding thing, don't worry about it. All right, so for rhythm guitar, I actually find that I don't ever add enough reverb to this, but that doesn't mean I'm like, oh yeah, reverb, let's go fucking crazy with this. Rhythm guitars generally we're going to add EQ and reverb. As you can see, my levels aren't too crazy. There isn't a whole lot of pops going on. There's a few maybe if you zoom in, there's a lot of pops here. But because of the compression that we added in the tones video, it's not too insane. So we're not going to add compression to this. We don't need to. Even during the palm mutes, the volume's not getting too crazy. So, blah, blah, we're going to add compression eventually. Turn that off. But let's start talking about reverb. For this track, we're going to the reverb. Now, remember what we said. So we're actually going to keep the reverb down to about 55. Yeah, I do that on purpose. Shut up. And high frequency dampening. You could actually get a little bit more for this. Let's go 40. Let's see how that sounds. You can usually learn, how much reverb you're putting on by going to a part that's being cut off, like right here. So yeah, that's, tacking on a little bit afterwards, but not too much. We're going to turn the wet mix down to about 7, just like the drums. And then the stereo width, we're actually going to turn all the way down. Fuck that shit, right? So we got the pans, that's already pretty much adding stereo width. So yeah, that sounds good. And let's just copy that for this part. Just copy in effects. You can add a preset, but yeah, some of my presets I named some pretty weird things. So for the sake of your sanity, I won't show you my presets. But yeah, some of you out there know what I name my presets, and I get bored. So let's hear how this rhythm sounds, both having a reverb effect. It's pretty subtle. It's not too crazy, and you don't want it to be too crazy, or else, it's going to get messy. So let's listen to how it sounds over here. I actually cut off this part because I think I made like a fret noise in here, and I was too lazy to actually go back and record it all over again because of one silly fret noise. So I chopped it off, and actually the reverb's going to help this. I mean, it sounds pretty natural, right? Without reverb, we will hear like all of this stuff, like these little sounds, and then all of a sudden just a cut of sound, and then, cut back into sound. But the reverb is actually kind of masking that. Some cool tricks to hide shit. I mean, that's why you're here, right? All right, and then let's solo this track. Usually I don't add any effects to this. I might add an EQ, but since it's mostly kind of being the foundation of our rhythm guitar sound, we're not gonna do anything to it because you're barely gonna hear it. So perfect. Let's unsolo these. Now we got all our tracks back. All right, so let's listen to these by themselves. Make sure the reverb isn't getting too crazy. All right, it sounds good. So let's look at our leads. Make sure we've got enough reverb here. We've got a little bit, but I'm wondering if maybe a little could help. Now, what you want to do is whenever you add an effect, I do this all the time. Sorry, just going back. If I say this is my reverb that I want to use. Make sure, the effect is actually helping and not, hurting, because I've done that before, whatever. It's common knowledge, but, you can overlook it very easily. All right, so yeah, there's that. Let me just shave this off. Shave it for later. Solo. I actually think I should add a little bit of reverb to that. Sometimes I won't add reverb to leads to make sure they're much clearer, but that's what you're playing with, when you're doing reverbs and stuff. That's usually what you have, to lose. So we're going to, I don't know, pretty much the same as rhythm guitar usually. Maybe a little more reverberation. Much less high frequency dampening though. That's going to start messing with this tone. And then stereo width, yeah, I mean, you can add quite a bit for this. It's going to make it sound a lot bigger, and, that might be what you want. So let's hear that. Personally, I think that sounds better, but that's because I love reverb. I love how it sounds. Makes me think I'm like in an arena or something. All right, so we're gonna copy this effect for this. You're gonna hate this song by the end of this tutorial series. Alright, so I mean that's pretty much all I wanted to really talk about in this video. What we're gonna do next week is we're actually gonna turn off all these reverb effects so that we can do it and then re-put them on later. And they should sound pretty cool, because right now, I mean, the mix is sounding pretty good by itself. But we can actually make it sound better, so each instrument is absolutely, you know, absolutely right there, so you don't have to really listen to figure out what's playing at the moment. You'll notice that in our spectrum, our lead guitars are taking up a big part of the spectrum. We don't want that. We want, you know, things to be you know, separated. And that can make our mix sound really good. You might have the temptation to upload it now. Don't do it, because we can still make this better, but I mean, if this is all you wanted to go, then fuck it, just upload this. You're done. Whatever. But if you want to make it better, you know, let's keep doing these tutorials. But I mean, pretty much, you got a recording right here. Good work, man. Alright, well, I'm completely out of stuff to talk about without talking about EQ and compression, so I guess I'm gonna sign off. You know, I guess I'll see you next week. Next week we're going to talk about EQing, of course. And the week after that, we're going to talk about compression. And then finally after that, we're going to talk about mastering. But, you know, right now, you got to make sure that you have your levels right before you start EQing. Otherwise, later, if you try to EQ and then put levels on, you know, you're going to be balancing a lot. And it's a good thing to do this methodically. All right, kids. Well, I got to go. I guess I'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves and mix your shit good.